recording. Right, this meeting is being recorded. All right, hello everyone. Good morning, good morning. Where I am, it's actually 6 a.m. because I'm in Maui. Still slightly dark out there, but I think I can see the screen just fine for now. But you can see everything. So you have the screen, you have everything's there, yeah?
Yes.
So, welcome to the last session. I've done this actually before where I work people through the final, and the reason why I do it is it gives you an opportunity to ask questions that are still not clear. So we can always interrupt. It's a fluid conversation. It's not just me telling you, here's the answer. It's going to also be you telling me what you think the answer is. And then we talk about why you think the answer is what it is, and then I'll tell you why it's right or why it might be wrong. So we're doing this together. It's not just me, but in that process, you'll notice that things that might still not be clear might become clear as we do this together. So that's really the purpose for me of doing this with you. And we're going to go through 12 questions, only 12 questions on the final. The last question, number 13, is a case study, which you can do on your own. You don't need me to do that. It's very similar to the final prep case study that I put into the module as an example. So it's very close to that. So you don't have to freak out. It's not anything crazy. And I'm sure some of you already looked at the final and see it's not that bad. But we do want to do it together so we understand the questions. So we're going to start with comparing the major studio model to the independent model. And we learned about certain differences, not just as it related to the IP, but also budget and cost and distribution. So I'm going to read the question. The major studio and the independent film industry operate in different ways. Which of the following statements are correct in comparing the major studio and independent production, distribution, and finance model? Circle the letters for the correct answer. So here you have 5 possible correct answers. So let's read them together. If a major studio finances development, production, and distribution of a project, wait a second, let me just look something up. Un momento, por favor. I wanted to see if I have the, hold on one second. One second. So if a major studio finances the development, production, and distribution of a project, it controls all rights and revenues. B, if an independent producer finances the development, production, and distribution of a project, he or she controls all the rights and revenues. If an independent producer finances the development, production, and distribution of a project, he or she controls all rights and revenues, even if a major studio finances a portion of a production cost for acquisition of the US, for example. If an independent producer finances the development, production, and distribution of a project, he or she controls all rights and revenues, even if a major studio finances a portion of the production and handles defined distribution rights in this case. If an independent producer finances the development, production, distribution of a project, he relinquishes all rights to the project to a major studio if the major studio finances a portion of the production through the acquisition of the US rights. And then major studios do usually not employ collection agents. Major studios do usually employ collection agents. So which answers do you guys think, you can actually unmute yourself, are correct here? What is your opinion of this?
I think all are correct except for E and G.
And G.
I agree.
That's what I have.
Yep.
That is correct, beautiful people. Here we go. That is the answers. All about E and G. And you all know why, so I don't have to really explain this, right?
I just have one question. C and D are so close. Wouldn't it be easier to just answer D without the C? Because C is already included in the D.
That's right, and you're being very smart, but where the differentiation is made here is certain defined international distribution rights. So there are additional rights that are being acquired by a studio, which is sometimes the case. What I'm trying to do here is to give you scenarios that actually happen in reality, and you know what that means. There are studios and network stations or studio-like operations, in this case like Amazon Studio, that would acquire US rights and other rights as well. They still wouldn't control the entire project. That's what the definition is that I wanted to focus you on here, that there are certain studios that will acquire not just the US or not just all rights, but certain defined rights. Does that make sense?
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Yeah, good. Question 2. A project is presented to you and the business plan states that the budget is estimated at 15 million. What financial elements would you look for in order to determine that this project is feasible? Mark all statements that would make this a feasible project. So why don't you read them for yourself so I don't have to read them all? And then you tell me what you think the 3 correct answers should be in this case.
D, E, and F.
I picked D, F, and G.
Yeah, I wasn't sure about the G because it just sounds weird. That's why I wasn't sure.
D, F, and G is correct, but who said something else right now? Because I want to know who said another answer?
D.
D is correct, F is correct, G is correct, but someone just mentioned another letter and I want to talk about that.
Okay, I actually want to ask about D, since you mentioned that was correct.
Yes.
And the reason why, so I have F and G, but I did not circle D because you specifically have or written into the sentence except for and. Because a lot of things that I read before was you want to have both of them, but having that or, it kept me from circling D.
That is correct, but let's think about this practically. You have a movie and you know that you should ideally have 70 to 75% estimate. So that conversation's already, that you already know because you answered. But what happens if you actually sell 75% of your rights? You literally go out into the world and you're pre-selling 70 to 75% of your rights to buyers. Would you consider this project to then be feasible? If you're pre-selling 70% to 75% of your budget?
Yeah, because you say you should have at least a pre-sale of 35. Your estimate should be 70, 75% international, but to have that pre-sale actually sold at a minimum above 35% is good.
Correct. So what I mean here, Zoran, is when you pre-sale so much that it's nearly meeting your estimate number, meaning you pre-sale basically everything the sales agent is telling you he can achieve. That is an indication for a very, very sellable and feasible and successfully driven project because so many people want to buy it. Does that make sense? Okay, anyone else questions to question 2?
Oh, D, F, and G, right?
D,
Yeah,
F,
can
and
you
G.
explain the G, like if the investor asks for like 35% pre-sales to invest, but like you don't have it, so would it still be feasible? Like that's where I'm confused a bit.
Yeah, but that's not the question that is asked. Yes, you can think about that and would it still be feasible, but the question here is if a project is feasible, if the international sales estimates are 70 to 75%, we know that's correct. And if the equity requests to see a minimum of 30 to 35% of the budget pre-sold, you need that anyway per your finance plan. If he asks for it or not, you're going to need it in order to state that this is a feasible project. See, the question that what I'm saying here to you is the investor asks for it versus the finance plan should have it anyway, which is something you've learned this entire class. But the investor will in fact ask for it. In reality, this is exactly what's going to happen. You will have someone wanting to finance your movie if you can prove that it's feasible by pre-selling 30 to 35% of your budget. This last sentence here is what happens in most situations. This is reality right down here. If I do a movie, if I am asked to finance in something, I want to see 30 to 35% pre-sales. And I make that a prerequisite to my funding, to my release of equity. Happens all the time. So for you to understand is, what does this situation actually mean? What are we actually talking about here? What does this question say? The question says, I'm talking to an investor and the investor wants me to show that I can pre-sell 30 to 35% of my rights. That's what this question says. And that's what you should be doing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, then I have a follow-up question. What about the investors who help you out on the development stage when you don't have anything yet?
That is good. The investor that helps you out of the development stage is an investor that connects to the IP. You will add a regulation for them that has to do with a turnaround clause. A turnaround clause means if I spend money while I develop my IP, put it together, write the script, write the treatment, write the Bible, put the cast together. This is all part of development. At that point, I'm really just getting the project ready for it to be financeable, and I'm getting it ready for it to have those estimates and to have those pre-sales. That's all done in the development phase. Now, this phase, if you don't make your movie ever, is going to, all the costs that are related to this phase are going to be connected and stay connected to your project forever, which means the investor then makes money in case anyone else ever options this project. If it's not you, someone else. If it's a studio or not a studio, doesn't matter. Anyone who ever makes this movie will have to pay this investor back. So this level of costs are called development costs, and these costs glue to your project like, you know, glue to a piece of paper. They will always be there. So the security for the investor is that even if you don't make the project and someone else makes it, they get paid back. This other security of the project, of this financing, is the following. The development portion is going to be paid back to the investor on closing. So let's say an investor gave you $100,000 to acquire rights for a book. And then you went and you got a writer to write the script and you paid another $100,000, and the investor paid for that as well. So in your budget, you will obviously have a column that says writer and rights. And it will say 100,000 for each because that's what the costs are, and you put it in your budget as such. When you close your movie, at the time you put all the finance elements together, this money will be released to you / to the investor. So the advantage of development funding is that it will be recouped immediately when the project closes. The investor does not have to wait until you have profits or sell any rights or do any profit participation or do any premium payments. For that portion of their investment, they will be repaid the minute you close your financing. So that's why this funding, even though it's riskier in the beginning, is not as risky when you know you're going to put it together, because it is refunded literally the moment the completion one issues the insurance on your movie, and everyone else gets the financing out to do the production. So on production start is when this portion is repaid. Now for the investor, you have to explain to them the different kinds of investments that are occurring here. You will say to them, you're going to give me money to get this project ready, and you're giving me $200 to do these rights. You will recoup those $200,000 once we close funding. And you're also going to give me another $1 million for equity for the production. And that other $1 million is going to be recouped in the recoupment corridor, in a regular corridor. You get 20% on your entire money, even on your investment money. So if you give me $1 million for my production and you give me 200,000 for development, you gave me 1.2 million, and your equity will go on both. The 200 will be paid to you on closing, and another $1 million will be paid to you in the waterfall, but the premium on both will also be paid on the waterfall. That's how you pay the investor back. And the investment agreement will say that you will only receive and pull this other $1 million for production if these criteria are fulfilled. And criteria include, you have to have a certain estimated budget, you have to have a certain number of estimated sales, you have to have at least 30 to 35% pre-sales. So in the funding requirement to release the production portion of your equity, it will state these things. It will state that only if these things are met, the criteria are met, will the other $1 million be released. So the risk for the million of production financing is a little different than the risk for the development, and it will be adjusted as such in the investment agreement and in your conversation with them and in the recoupment period. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
All right. So we have three answers that were correct here, which was F, G, and D. Here we are. All right, number 3. The film and television projects are established. As a film and television project is established, packaging is an essential component to the process. What is the meaning of and the reason for packaging? Circle all the correct answers. So what do we think is correct here? Take your time to read it and then let me know your thoughts.
A, B, C, D.
Yep, I agree with her, everything but E.
However, E is like the right answer too, but I think it's an answer to a different question. I don't know. I was debating between D and E. I wasn't sure which one is the
Okay, so let's look at D, for example. Packaging of a project with talent, including cast and director, has no relevance and does not change the value of the project without an amazing script. Are we sure this is a good answer?
No.
Exactly. So D is definitely not correct because it has value and it is important, even if the script is great. E, packaging of a project with a director only makes sense if the A-level cast who agreed to be in the lead roles approves the director. What happens if the A-level cast does not approve the director?
Then they leave the project.
Correct. Is that still a good idea?
No.
So E is right. So it
Okay.
needs to make sense. The cast needs to approve. So the answers, you already said the right answers for A, B, C, that was correct. But where you were incorrect is when you reflected on D and E. D is not correct, E is correct. Are we clear? Why? Okay.
Jeanette, just curious to play,
Yes.
get it on the flip side. If you have a good director, I mean, isn't that also necessary?
Yeah, but the question here,
yeah,
obviously it is. But the question here was not, is the director good or bad? The question is, if your cast does not approve your director, what happens? You have no project then. It goes bye-bye, right? Or you fire the director. But it is important that your cast approves the director. You learned that in the packaging process, how important that is. So it is essential to make sure that that happens. That's why E is correct.
And about the D, we just assume that a great cast will never attach to a bad script. Is that the logic?
You don't assume anything. You're basically assuming that it says here, the director and cast has no relevance. When you hear that the director and cast has no relevance, that already should be a red flag.
Okay. Got it.
It does not change the value. If you have an amazing script and you have Joe Schmo and Jane Doe, is it not better to have Brad Pitt and Angelina?
True.
Well,
exactly. All right, fine. Just say it as an example. Don't make my life so hard here. Okay, but you get the concept, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. All righty then. Question 4. So this is the answers. Question 4. Just as important as the script and the package is the budget, especially in view of it having to be feasible yet deliver quality. What are some of the important considerations to be made when deciding on the budget of a project? So just read through these and think about what makes sense in view of making a feasible, quality-driven project.
I mean, C makes sense and A makes sense.
I agree. I actually had A and C.
All right, so let's look at C. Let's look at C. The budget of a project for which the international sales estimates are lower than 70 to 75%. That's already a problem right there. Yeah. Must be reduced in order for the project to be feasible from an equity point of view. That's a good thing. In a case in which 35% of the project was pre-sold, internationally and production incentives of 40% are applicable. So what we have here is the budget of a project is lower than 70 to 75% and must be reduced for it to be feasible from an investor point of view.
But we also have pre-sales of 35% and production incentive of 40.
Correct. So in reality, what this says is your production incentives are higher than what they should be in the finance plan, which is why you still, I mean, they're higher, which is good. And you have 30% of the process, which is good. But when you start off, if you don't have anything in the US applicable and your estimates are lower, you have to reduce the budget. You can offset it a little here with the 40% incentive, but you still have to watch and make sure that your budget is matched up with what the reality is. Now, in this case, I actually have this as a wrong answer. I'm trying to figure out why I had this as a wrong answer. Let me just read at this carefully because I might have mixed something up. Actually, the reason why I have this lower, I just looked at my notes, is I have a project actually that I did where the incentives were nearly 45%. So in this case, I'm going to go as a practical example. It's worded a little tricky and I should probably change that. I'm looking at a project that is like $10 million in budget just for the math. And in my finance plan, I should have had, I would have been okay with about 25% of incentives. And that if I have the 70 to 75. If I don't have those high estimates, I always look, when I have low estimates, I always look to offset it with money that I don't have to repay back. So in this case, I always turn to incentives first. And if I can't get enough incentives, I go to brand integration or other things like deferments or reducing salary somewhere. So what this is trying to suggest is that it would be, the focus should be on the incentive. So if we look at it to be feasible, it should actually be correct and not incorrect, and this should be 2. So I'm going to change that here. Because if you have a 40% incentive and you have slightly lower estimates, you're still going to be fine. As long as you have 35% pre-sold, which indicates to you that you have a project that is accepted by the marketplace. So we would do A and C as the correct answers in this case.
Jeanette, why then must the budget be automatically reduced if the non-recoupable sources are decent?
It actually, you know what, it actually does not have to be reduced. Maybe that's
so
why.
C is wrong then, so it's just A.
No, it would, you know what, I'm going to turn this back.
I think that
the budget does not have to be reduced
correct,
in a situation like that.
Yeah.
It wouldn't
So it
have to be.
That's why I put it as wrong. Because
Yeah,
it
you're right.
Yeah.
You know what? I overread that. It's too early for me. It's 6 a.m. Yes, in this case, you do not have to. So this is where the trick is, must be reduced. You don't have to do that because you have enough here.
So it's just A?
It's just A. I overread this. So even I have to read this carefully in order to understand my own questions. Okay.
May I make just a little comment?
Please.
The thing is why it's confusing. I think that it's because we don't know how low it is than 75. If it's around 65%, it already, let's say the 15% match from the incentives already covers the 10% of the lower estimates. So we don't know how much lower it is. Maybe
Correct.
That's why it's confusing.
You know what? And I'm going to change that. Define the reduction percentage of the budget for this question. Thank you for this input, because I overread this too. So anyone, when there are, you know, when I write these things, if these things are not clear, could be either or. First of all, you would never get points deducted, but your point is correct. We should have defined how much are we reducing the budget already? What is the actual amount? So A is correct. So let's go here to question 10. We're talking about verifying the market demand of a project. An optimal chance for profit is provided with a project that is financed based on a solid financial plan. A solid financial plan mirrors the verified market value of a project. Even if we imagine we put together the financing in an optimal way, we want to make sure we can establish a value for the project in the marketplace. So it means that finance plan first, and then you prove, you know, is it worth what I think it is worth as you go out and do your pre-sales. How can the market value for a project be verified with market feedback or talent packaging in a way that would indicate the best likelihood for profit? That's really what the question is here. So think about these scenarios that you're reading here and tell me which 4 of them are correct.
All except A.
That is correct.
But then, can I have a follow-up question?
Yes, please, let's do that.
So I was debating about the D.
All right, let's look at D.
Because I know that if you already have something that aired like in France, which is usually very type specific to that country, sometimes it works, but sometimes it doesn't. So I picked D just because it's already completely paid off and it made money in France. So by showing it in US, it would be just an extra money. Is
correct? That and that's exactly what it is. So imagine you did a little movie in France and you got it paid for by Canal Plus, and it is already done and you're happy, and you didn't even expect it to sell it in the US because you made it in French for the French market. And now Lionsgate in the US comes and says, you know what, we really like this thing. We want to put this on, we want to put it in a limited release, and we also want to put it on Netflix, and you know, we want to buy the US rights. This is a revenue you did not foresee because you specifically did it for your country in that language. And it happens that these foreign language films or foreign language series are picked up outside of their territory because they're good. But it's not intended at the time. They're not made for the global market because otherwise they would have been made in English. So that is why D is also a proof for a successful, feasible project.
Okay. Then I also have a question about C. $2 million and a A-list star picked up by US mini major to release 100 screens. That also gave me a tiny question, because like 100 screens doesn't really give you much, and there is nothing else that describes how else would you recoup the money. Okay. So why do you think A-lister, there are so many movies that failed with A-listers.
Correct.
So like, why do you think that?
Here's the reality of what you're going to find. So let's say you do a $2 million movie when you have an A-list star in it, because it's a very unique story, and that's usually what the case is. It's a very unique story where the A-list star feels A, the story speaks to them, and B, the role that they're playing is a role that expands on their range, or is a role they really want to play. So it's an unusual situation already as we begin with, and it has to do with the fact that this is a unique project. Now, with a unique project like that, that's a $2 million budget, there is no way of knowing, is this ever going to be theatrically released? Is any US buyer ever going to pick this up? You just don't know. And you go by, when you make this movie, you go by the assumption that it's not going to be a US release, because you don't know. You can't assume that. The fact that it will be a US release is a good thing. Even if it's only 10 screens, it would be a good thing. Even if it would just be a platform release, it would be a good thing. Because for a project like that, and I'm very happy you asked that question, because this is what happens a lot. You cannot estimate what happens in the US market, and any sale you do in the US is a plus for you. Because when you put it together, you're thinking, well, hopefully someone buys it in the US. It is a cute movie, and I'm making it because I want to tell the story, and it's an important story to me. And it's not your regular commercial movie. So it's very hard to predict what happens in the US with movies like this, as it often is. So for a domestic distributor to come to you and say, I'm going to not only pick this up and pay an MG, but I'm also going to theatrically release this movie in a limited fashion. And these movies are often released in a limited release pattern, and limited releases very many times 100 screens to maybe 500 screens. That's what they consider limited. Sometimes it's even less than 100. So they target the release very specifically to the audience where they believe that there is where there's takers. You would find this 100-screen release to be applicable in a big city release. So you would go to New York, LA, Chicago, just the big cities, and put the movie out there and not so much in the suburbs. That's how they do these small limited releases very often. But for someone who, hold on, there is a typo in here. For someone who does this kind of movie, it is an additional revenue that is not necessarily predictable. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, long-winded answer here. Question 6. Are we 6? Question 6?
Yeah.
Okay. Did we just do 6? No, we did 5, right?
No, we did 5.
Okay, I'm lost. When financing a project, a producer and investor should ideally be both aligned as it relates to risk minimization and profit optimization. What are some of the risk minimizing statements one can make when financing a project in view of optimizing project profits? So read those scenarios and let me know what you think is a scenario that is profitable. 3 of them are, and 2 of them are not.
B, C, and F.
I agree with B and C. I was a bit confused with the D.
Okay, so let's look at C for a moment. If you compare the risk profile of an investor A, who financed 30% of the budget for a project for which a bank finances 20%. So let's make a note here. We have 30% equity. I always have to write this down. We have a 20% bank loan. That's a gap bank loan. And you compare that with an equity investor who puts in 50% in this case. He takes over the bank position, so he takes over the 20% gap position. The risk profile is the same for both, while the second investor could charge a higher premium on his investment, as well as a larger back-end participation. So the second investor who puts in 50% obviously spends more money and therefore gets a higher back-end and a larger profit participation. So far it's fine. However, in this case, the producer who chooses investor would reduce his potential profits. So when we have an investor on the one hand that has a, hold on, C is correct here. Hold on a second, I'm just going to make a note real quick here. So we have an investor on the one hand that gives you 30%, and let's do it with an example. Let's say you have a movie that's $10 million. The investor in the first situation gives you $3 million. So in that situation, you would pay back 3 million plus 20%, which is 3.6 million, if I do this correctly. Now, in the second case, you have an investor who gives you $5 million, and now you have to pay back 5 million plus 20%. So in this case, you pay back 5 million, 20%, I think is $1 million, you pay 6 million back. In the first case, you have a bank loan where you don't pay any profit participations. You pay an interest. In the second case, you pay premium. You pay actually $400,000 more in premium than you would pay in the first scenario. So for you as a producer, your profits will be $400,000 less in the second scenario. Does that make sense?
Yes, but you will still make money, some money.
Yeah, but that's not the question. The question is, are you making more or less money than in the other scenario? And you are making less money in case B because you're paying $400,000 more in premium that you would have not had to pay in case A. That's the question here. So that's why C is correct, right?
Yeah.
So, and then you had a question regarding another point where you were unsure about another point. Which one was that?
D.
Okay, so let's look at D also. So a bank is looking for a project with 50% estimates. So the bank looks at a film, let's say, let's go with an example that is $10 million, and the international sales estimates are 5 million. The project is funded with 35% subsidies, so a fairly high subsidy, and it has a 35% US deal, which is cash flowed. So this is now a situation where we have a US pre-sale. The project has secured 20% pre-sales from a bankable distributors. All amounts are net to the budget. So in addition to the pre-sales of 20%, it also had a US sale of 35. So we now pre-sold 55% of the budget.
Yeah.
The bank is asked to lend 10% gap. So it translates to 15% of the budget because we have costs in there, right? It is less, however, than 20%, which is what they usually would be asked to do. So the bank here, what the reality is, you have low estimates, yes, but you have a pre-sale to the US, which signals to you that this is a project that is driven by the US market, because otherwise you wouldn't have had a US pre-sale. And if you would have had a low US pre-sale, I would say estimates still would have to be a little higher. But in this case, it's a 35% of the budget pre-sale, which is an okay pre-sale. That's a pre-sale that you can make. It's not bad pre-sale. So what this indicates is when I have a project where I sell 35% of my budget to the US, I know it's likely driven by the US market, and I will potentially not, I could make money in the US, if the subject matter is driven by the international market, but my sales agent tells me it is not driven by the international market because he is already telling me I'm only making 50% on foreign. So I'm working on a project right now when my sales agent says it's only 50%, that is driven by the US market, proven by the fact that the US is sold, which makes this a feasible project. If the US would not have been sold, and it would be 50%, and this would be applicable, the other items, even if the bank gives me less money, it would not be a feasible project.
Yeah, and that's what confused me, the last line. Producer feels this loan makes sense for the bank and bank will approve it. But like, we usually always talked about 20% and 75% sales numbers are lower. I wasn't sure how bank would feel about it.
And that's a very good point that you're making. So again, let's talk about reality. In the reality of bank lending, you will find that the 20% number is obviously the cap. In very many cases, the bank will only give you 10 to 15% because they're being careful with you as a first-time producer with a project where they're not sure what's the sales agent, why is it only 50%? In many cases, banks will give you less than 20% if there is anything that they feel could potentially be a risk. For producers that start out, it's very unlikely for them to immediately get 20% of a bank loan, unless you have a very strong pre-sale component there and the sales agent is very strong. That's the only way to offset that. So you will actually find in reality that your bank will likely give you around 10 to 15% of a bank loan for your first few projects that you're making. Okay. So that's why I wanted to bring this example into the world, just so you know there is a potential that you're not going to get the full 20%, even if you have enough unsold rights available, because banks make their own rules and they look at something and saying, okay, who's the producer? What are the pre-sales? What are the estimates? And in this case, they see the estimates being lower. And as we've learned, the bank does not only not care about the US, even if you have sold the US, it will cash flow it, but it will never consider it as a value because it's so volatile. So in this case, the bank says, okay, fine, you sold the US and I'm going to cash flow the deal for you, but I'm going to be lower on my gap because I'm not seeing the international estimates to be so high. So that's when banks will say, if the estimates are lower than 70%, they usually drop down from the 20 into a lower range because they want to be sure that they're covered. So this is an example for that very scenario where estimates are lower and the bank reacts accordingly. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So the right answers would be A, C, and D?
Yes, that's correct.
Cool. Yeah, it's because you have these tiny phrases at the end. That's what like I've spent days thinking
I know,
about.
I'm so sorry, but I want, and
No,
I'm so sorry for that, but I wanted to inspire your thinking in a way that you find yourself reflected in real life cases. So I wanted to, when I ask these questions, it's because they actually happen. And I want you to think about that. I want you to think about what happens if. I've learned all these scenarios, but what happens if this or this or this applies? How do I then go about this? I wanted to inspire a little bit of critical thinking by throwing these curveballs in. And you've learned all this. It's not that you don't know it, but it's now time to practically apply what you've learned in the class by giving you a situation where you really have to think about how am I going to deal with this based on what I've learned, but also based on reality. How would I do this? And then you go by what you think makes sense for you.
Hi, Jeanette. I had a quick question for question 6 regarding the risk profile.
Okay, let me go back there.
I just wanted to clarify, what does it mean with the risk profile? Theoretically, if one investor takes an additional 20% and takes out a gap, the gap portion that the other one had to wait, isn't that a difference in the recoupments?
Okay, so it's a very good question. I'm glad you asked this. There is a module in the class where it talks about collateral scheduling. So it means that when you have your waterfall and money comes in, your collateral becomes thinner and thinner and thinner, because what that means is you start with the bucket of collateral that is a bucket of rights. And as you go, you're selling, you're selling, you're selling, you're selling. So your collateral becomes less and less and less and less and less. So the idea is to have enough collateral to still pay your investor. So when you have let's say you have, like in this case, let's go back to our $10 million budget. $10 million budget. And in this case, I think it was $5 million in estimates. And then we had some pre-sales. We used the pre-sales already to finance our movie. So they're gone. They're basically no longer available for us as collateral because we already used them. Now we are left with 50% and we have to pay someone $5 million, right? The 50% of the $10 million budget barely cover those $5 million. So they're still there. You still have enough collateral to cover the 5 million, but you can see how it gets thinner. But if in a case where we have $3 million from the investor and $2 million from the bank, it's still the same $5 million we have to cover. The number doesn't change. So our collateral reflects what we have to pay off. And if the collateral is less than what we actually have to pay off, that means you're beginning to put your investor at risk. But if the collateral is the same than it was before, because the matter is you have to pay $5 million. Who cares? You know you have to pay $5 million. You have to pay 30%, $3 million to your investor, and you have to pay $2 million to the bank. Or you pay $5 million to the investor. You're still paying the same $5 million from somewhere. And that is why the risk profile is the same, because the number is the same and the rights that you have available to pay off these people are the same. Does that make sense? So your equation of here's how much I have to pay people hasn't changed. If that changes, then the risk profile changes. If you have more available, then the risk profile gets better. If you have less available to cover your debt, then the risk profile gets more tricky and gets more dangerous. Does that make sense?
Yes, from a collateral, that makes sense.
Yeah, so the risk profile is driven by how am I paying this person or this bank back. That's what the risk profile is driven by. And the thinner that layer becomes, the higher the risk. That's why when you put a mezzanine lender in front of an equity lender, it becomes tricky, because if you look at your let's take the example again, $10 million movie, and we have, let's say, $5 million. Let's say we have a bank with 20% and we have an equity investor with just 20%, and then we have a mezzanine lender with 10%. So let's look at that, and we know we have $5 million in estimates. Let's keep that example. So we have $5 million in estimates. We pay the bank back, $2 million are gone because they get 20%, right? So now we're down to $3 million that we have left. The mezzanine lender gave us $1 million because he gave us 10%. So now another $1 million is left. But the mezzanine lender also wants a premium. So he might add another let's say 10%, so another 100,000 in this premium. So now our equity investor doesn't have already enough collateral from our sales estimates point of view, because there's only 5 million available to sell to pay the equity, because we paid the bank $2 million, we paid the mezzanine lender $1 million, and we paid him a premium of 100. So now we paid 3,100,000. We have left 1,900,000, but we still have to pay our equity 2 million. So now already we're running a scenario where there is a potential loss of $100,000 because we put an equity investor, a mezzanine investor in between who demands a premium. Does that make sense?
Yes.
For everyone? I want to make sure everyone understands the whole collateral thing. So when you put together a finance plan and you run your equity investment and your loans against your actual sales, the money that you will be receiving, you always have to make sure everything is covered. In the ideal world, you want to have a little more than what you need to pay back, obviously, because you also pay collection agency fees, you pay sales agency fees. It's all paid from that bucket. The rights bucket is the money that you will be receiving when you sell your movie. And if you have a lot of costs and fees, that's why, for example, if your sales agent all of a sudden asks for 30%, 35% in sales agency fee, you pay that from your bucket. And this is going to basically affect your equity investor because they are paid after that. So if you pay a lot to the sales agent from your bucket, and if you pay a lot to maybe other people, premiums, or any other costs that you have, the ice becomes very thin for your equity investor because you use a lot of the revenues from your distribution to pay all these extra expenses. So that's why you need to be careful with how much sales agency fee you can allow, how much cost you can allow, how much you can pay to a collection agent, what kind of premium you can allow. Those things are important. And the way to figure out if you're not spending too much is by doing what you're doing in this class, by running these recoupment schedules and seeing what happens if I increase my sales agency fee now by 10%? How is that going to affect my recoupment? Is the equity still get their money back? Are they going to be at risk? You can use these Excel spreadsheets in figuring out when your cost component changes, what that does to your bottom line and especially to your equity investor. Yeah? Okay, what question did we just do? Did we do 6? We said we did 6, right? Let's go to 7. Distribution and financing. So in some cases, sales agents are very keen on securing a project which they feel can be profitable, and then they offer a minimum guarantee to a producer early on to secure the project. When it comes to a profitable project, producers have options. Which of the options below would be ideal for the producer if he would receive 20% of the budget as a minimum guarantee from a sales agent? Now remember that minimum guarantee recoups first from all sales that are coming in, from all sales revenues. So if the producer wants to use that MG to close the financing on the film, what scenario is possible A, profitable? So look at these and let me know your thoughts on this and your questions.
Can I ask a quick question?
Please.
That drove me crazy completely for like days.
Good.
So what I figured is that if you have a bank loan, you cannot use MG because bank is using it as a pre-sales collateral. In Gap, then you can use MG. Is that correct?
Here's the thing, and I'm very happy you're asking these questions because
that's a bit confusing.
The MG, you look at the waterfall, right?
Yeah.
If the sales agent gives you, well, let's take a movie, $10 million. Sales agent says, I'll give you $2 million as a minimum guarantee up front, but I'm going to recouping that from the sales I will be making. So he gives you $2 million. He then goes out, makes the sales, and he recoups them, the $2 million. There is no room for a bank there. Because if you would have a bank loan, they would be recouping from the same collateral at the same time in first position. So you would always have to make a decision Am I going to use the minimum guarantee that the sales agent will give me, or am I going to use the bank loan instead? And the reason why you want to take the minimum guarantee is you incentivize your sales agent to sell. They have skin in the game. The only time you do not want to take the MG is if their sales agency fee rises up to a level where your equity investor is hurt. So let's say, for example, what happens very often is that a sales agent will say, I will give you the $2 million, but my fee will go up to 35 or 40%, my sales fee, which is basically double than what you would be paying in a regular situation where you have a bank loan. The way to agree to that deal still is if you tell your sales agent, you can only charge that 40% or that 35% during the period you are recouping your MG. It will still be a little tricky for the equity, but it's not the end of the world. If the sales agent doesn't agree to that, then you cannot take the MG because you would be hurting your equity investor. In that case, I would say take the bank loan. But in many cases, that would make sense. So knowing that if I take the MG, I cannot take a bank loan is your first rule of thumb. Knowing that you will not take the MG if the sales agency fee rises to a level where you don't have enough collateral to pay your equity investor back is the decision when you say, okay, this becomes tricky, I now have to do the bank loan. And then having a conversation with your sales agent and saying, can we please agree, you get these high fees because you are giving me basically a loan that you want to get paid for. But can we agree on the 40% or 35% only while you're recouping the 2 million, and then you go back down to the regular 15, 20, 25, whatever you agreed. That's a solution to that problem. So knowing that you cannot use both is the first important aspect for this question. And that's what you need to remember on all of them.
So the only right answer would be E, or none at all.
7. What I have, so you said you said you have E, so E is correct. So I'd like you to, let's look at question A as well. If the producer has an equity investor of 30% financing, a mezzanine lender of 10%. So let's write that down. Let's do a $10 million budget. I always have to write these things down. And we have 3 million equity.
10 mezzanine. Yeah.
We have 10%. So it's 1 million mezzanine. So now we have
2 million incentive.
Hold on. We have 10% production incentive. So 2 million in incentives.
And 2 million in bank financing pre-sales.
2 million of a gap loan. Oh, is it bank's pre-sale bank financing?
Sales,
So it's pre-sales, it's not gap loan. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So we basically have 3 million equity, 1 million mezzanine, 2 million incentive, and we have 2 million in pre-sales, actual sales, and then we get another MG. Of which is, I believe, 2 million, right?
Yes.
So that gives me $10 million. So I'm funded. Why is that not correct?
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So with the bank loan, there's 2 different kinds of funding, right? There's the pre-sales that they can lend against, which is cash flowed by the pre-sales. And then there's the gap loan, which is not backed by anything other than the estimates. So then my question is, can you take the MG when there's a pre-sale loan and not the gap loan?
Very good question. I'm glad you asked this, Celeste. The answer is yes, because the pre-sales are based on actual contracts that you already have. So you can take that money. Very, very good point. I'm glad you make that distinction. The only money you cannot take is the gap loan.
Right. Okay. Got it. That's what I was confused about.
Yes.
Great.
And I think that is also what throws people off there, because they're like, hold on, I can't take a bank loan, and that's exactly the reason. You can take the pre-sales, but you cannot take the gap loan.
Perfect. Okay.
And I think that also answers, who was it, Lily's question? Lila, who asked the other question? I didn't see the name, sorry.
It would be Victoria.
Victoria, yes. Okay, cool.
Bank finances pre-sale, so it's not a loan, because I assumed it was a loan against the MG.
Correct. And because it's pre-sales, you can take it. That's why A is correct. You can take that. This would be funding your movie. This would be a funding scenario for a fully financed movie. Because you're taking the 20% because it's based on pre-sales, not on a gap loan.
Huh.
See here, pre-sales of 20%. That's what you're looking at.
So if you would say that it was a bank loan of 20%, that it wouldn't be the right answer, right?
Correct. If I would have said it's a gap loan, I would have had to say it's a gap loan, because even if I say it's a bank loan, you could have said, well, what is it? Is it pre-sales? Is it gap? Without knowing that, I can't give you an answer, and you would have been right. I would have had to define what bank loan it is. Is it a gap loan? Is it a pre-sale loan? What is it? So in this case, I defined it as pre-sales. And I made it 20% to throw you off.
Yeah.
So there's that.
So then for E, it can't, is E correct? Because it says-
E is correct, E is correct. But I want to talk
gap of 20%, so that's where I'm confused.
Oh, no, but gap is correct. You are right, E is correct. Because this is a bank financing gap loan here. So this answer is correct, but A is also correct. That's why I'm pointing it out. And I also like you to look at D, hold on, A, D. I want to look at D real quick. If the producer has an equity investor financing 30%, so we're back to 3 million in equity. A mezzanine lender of 10, we had that before. An incentive of 20, we have that before. And a gap financing of 20. So this is now gap. And if all amounts are net to the project, he can use the MG from the sales agent, will still not be fully financed. So this answer is correct because he would not be fully financed. And that's exactly why here, gap loan 20%, and if he uses the MG, he can only use one or the other. He would not be fully financed. So D is also correct because it says he can't use the MG from the sales agent because he has a gap. Makes sense?
I'm so lost.
Okay, let's do this again. We have an equity investor that does 30%, fine. We have a mezzanine lender that does 10%, fine. We have 4 million bucks. We have a gap loan. Gap loan is loan against unsold rights of 20%. That's 2 million. Great. And we could get a MG for 2 million. However, we can only use a gap loan or an MG. We cannot do both, as we just talked about, because the gap loan is a loan against unsold rights. The minimum guarantee from the sales agent is a loan against unsold rights. And that unsold rights recoupment position can only be given to one debtor, to one entity. It's either the bank or the sales agent, because they cannot both recoup at the same time from the same collateral. So a decision has to be made. Who will I allow to recoup in that position? I can only do the bank or the sales agent. If I do both, that doesn't exist. So because I can only do one or the other, my movie is not financed. I'm missing $2 million in this situation. Does that make sense?
That makes sense for me on D. I just don't see the distinction between D and E because there's a gap loan in E as well. So I think that's
the distinction is it says he can't use it and he's not fully financed. That's the distinction. And in E, let's look at E.
D, I totally get why he can't. Okay. I get why that's correct. But E, I'm just seeing a lot of similar wording, so I'm not seeing.
Yeah. So let's go through it word by word. Producer has 30% equity. Okay, mezzanine under 10. Great. A budget incentive of 20. Great. And a bank loan for gap. Great. If all amounts are net to the budget, he can use the MG from the sales agent, would still not be fully financed. It's the same. It's actually the same.
Using the gap and MG.
Yeah, but it's not financed. So they're both scenarios are actually the same.
So then it wouldn't be right.
It would be right because
it would be right.
It would be correct, but in both cases they're not financed.
You're not financed. Okay, got it.
They're basically the same set in a different way.
I see. Okay, got it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Jeanette, really quickly though, but it says he can use the MG, but if there's that's assuming that the bank.
I should say this. He uses. In the case, if he uses, I should actually.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Let me just finish my Jinglish here. Thank you. I'm going to make a note. Question 7. For myself. Yeah, my Jinglish sometimes throws people off. Okay, so I'm going to say here. he could.
He could use MG?
I would say, if all amounts are net to the project and he would decide to use, then it's not fully financed, because that's what it is. Because it's not like he can. I also would say here he would decide to use the MG. I'm going to do the same thing up there. Fixing
Because then in doing so, he would not be able to use the gap. So that's why it wouldn't be financed.
All right.
Okay. So that makes total sense.
Yeah.
Okay. So then E is correct because of that last phrase, which would still not be fully financed. That's
correct.
Okay, got it.
It's still not be fully financed is the key word here. And it's the same here. So I would also change this here and saying if he uses, I'm going to just mark this for myself real quick. I'll fix that later. Just for myself, so I have a note. Thank you for this. So, but the concept is really what I want to get down here, that you understand if you have an MG and you have a bank loan, you have to decide which is the one you want to decide. So these are the correct answers to use, to put in your finance plan. So let's go to 8. Balancing various financial elements available to producers when funding their film or television project is as important as knowing which finance sources to choose and how to fit them together in an optimal way. Circle the financial elements that balance a financial plan out mostly optimally in view of profits for the producer. So you're looking at a finance scenario that is the ideal balance for you, not for the equity investor or anyone else. So have a thought here. Let me know what you think.
I think I know that B is correct.
Yeah, that's true. That is true. 2 more to pick from.
So that's the thing that threw me off, I think, in C and D is that minimizing the incentive and how it would react to the profit.
So let's look at C. A project is estimated to have 75% in revenues from international distribution, but has not yet done any pre-sales. There is no bank loan, but an equity investor agrees to finance 25%. The project is offered a US deal with the minimum guarantee of 25% of the budget paid by the studio. The production incentive is offered as 50%. The profit margin for this project would be higher if the incentive would be reduced to 20% because 50% is not needed. Very convoluted answer. So let's break this thing down. So we have the 75% estimates, good, but we don't have any pre-sales. And there is no bank loan because if you don't have pre-sales, you don't get a bank loan. It's just that's a given, you should know that. So the equity is, however, 2.5%. So all we have right now is $2.5 million. And then we get a US deal,
which is
upfront for 2.5 for 25%. I'm going by 2.5, just I'm estimating this budget is 10 million just for the heck, for my math. So the production incentive is 50%, so not adding 5 million. The profit margin would be higher if the incentive would be reduced. How is that making any sense? The incentive is money that I don't have to pay back. If it's lower, it's less money that I don't have to pay back.
Okay, so
I want more money that I don't have to pay back.
Okay.
Right?
So it's wrong.
It's wrong because I want the 50% incentives, no matter what the situation is and no matter what the convoluted language is.
Okay.
I want my incentive. And that's what it's convoluted to basically distract you from the fact that you should say to yourself, if I have 50% of an incentive, there is no scenario why I would want less than that.
Okay.
Right? So that's why this is not correct.
Then D is correct because
D is correct. Yes, D is correct. D is correct. But you have one more to pick from. Actually, so if D is correct, you have 2 more. So there are 2 more that I'd like you to look at that could make sense for you as a producer. So we know it's not C, so clearly it's A and B because we eliminated C or marked D. So let's look at the first two scenarios and understand why they make sense for us as producers. A project is estimated to have 75% in revenues from international distribution. Good. 30% pre-sales. Good. It gets a bank loan of 20%. Good. It gets incentive of 20%. Good. And 30% equity. This is all you learned. Why is that not correct? This is like the picture book of finance plans here. Wake up, wake up. Yes, this works.
When you start reading other answers, you're like, maybe there's something wrong with an A.
Don't read other answers. Stick to the answers that you're reading. Damn it. This is the ideal finance plan right there. This is what you learned in module 1. Thank you.
No, I know, but like, you know, rest are just so vague sometimes. Or like,
I know, the German in me can't help itself. So B, let's look at B. So number 1, I think A, we're all clear. This makes sense. Yeah, there's no question. Let's look at B. Why does B make sense? A project is estimated to have 75% in revenues. Good. 30% pre-sales. Good. 20% bank loan. Good. 20% incentive. Good. The project would have even a stronger chance to achieve project if the remaining balance of 30% is split between a mezzanine lender and an equity lender, because the mezzanine lender requires a lower premium. For you as a producer, that's correct.
Yeah, because like you want to pay less.
Correct. Exactly. So all we're doing here is we're taking the pie of the 30% equity and we're dividing it. We're giving some to someone who we have to pay less premium to. Does it make sense for the equity investor? Probably not. But does it make sense for you as a producer? Absolutely. Right?
Yeah.
Okay, so A and B are clear. Are we clear why we like them?
Yes.
Good.
Can I just ask one clarifying question? I totally got those answers, but I was just thinking, I remember you said something that sometimes mezzanine money can be expensive money. I know that doesn't really relate here, but did I remember that right? That sometimes a mezzanine loan
It is expensive for what it is, and it is also dangerous, and here's why.
Because they could take control of the project, right?
Correct. And
yeah, okay.
That actually happened to me where someone took away my movie because the term for the loan was so short that there was no way for me to make that mezzanine payment after I paid my bank. I got a little bit duped and learned my lesson because I signed a mezzanine deal with someone where the loan had to be paid back in 3 years. The usual term for your bank loan is 18 to 24 months. So that's already 2 years where the bank loan is being paid. And having only 1 year to pay back a mezzanine loan that could be 10% of your budget is just not enough. So I made the mistake, A, I didn't give myself enough time, and B, I took a mezzanine loan that was probably too high, should have been less. So my own equity, which came after the mezzanine, was affected by that. And that's why I would say the answer is it's a loan that is dangerous if you don't watch all the terms carefully. And
so it's risky, but it could pay off. Like
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's also expensive because here's what happens. In many times, they will ask for fees that are coming out of the budget. They will ask you to put EP fees in there, executive producer fees in there. They'll ask you to put a legal fee in there. So they ask for all kinds of things that you have to then budget. And obviously they will reduce the mezzanine, but you're adding fees up front. Even if the premium is lower in the end, you have all these other extra fees, which sometimes are not great. Does that affect the equity investor? Not directly because you're budgeting those fees, but for you, it could be expensive at certain places if they ask for too much extra stuff. That's why I'm not so crazy about those loans.
Okay, it doesn't. I know it doesn't super pertain to the question, but I just wanted to make sure.
No, I think it's a good question, and I want you to ask all these questions. That's why we're doing this today, because that's exactly the kind of clarification I'm looking for.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Talking to you about. No, thank you.
Hi, Jeanette.
Yeah.
Quick question, piggybacking off that.
Yeah.
What is an ideal term for the mezzanine, or what range would you?
You know what? If it would be me, and it's really just a personal feeling, I would probably stick around 5%, because that's usually what I'm missing somewhere, somehow. There's always like this little piece that is like, darn it, I'm missing the little piece to close. So if I can get a 5% break from someone, I would take it. That would be my personal limit. I've done 10%, I've done 15%. And yes, I've had, the reason why I did 10 and 15 in those two cases that I can think of right now is because I had a bunch of equity left and I wanted to spread it out in 2 more movies. So I decided, instead of putting a higher equity into 1 movie, I split it up into 2. And it was okay because both movies were successful, thankfully. Could have gone the other way. But I just wanted to diversify. And that's a reason, that's another reason where if you are an equity investor yourself, if you put in your own money, the idea is always to diversify if you can. Because your chances of making money are higher, obviously, if you invest in more things. But if you're looking at it on a project by project basis, I would cap it at like 5. Just so, yeah, that makes sense. But that's just me being me. Could, you know, you would be, sometimes you can be okay with 10. I would try not to do more than 10 though.
How soon would you try to pay it back, or how long would you?
Good. Thanks for asking. Nothing under 5 years. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, seriously, because that gives you all the time in the world. And even if something happens, you never know. And just put it at 5 because you're paying the same premium for it. You can have a, you know, you don't care how long the term is because you're not paying more for it. So yes, 5 years should be the minimum for a mezzanine loan in my book. Also personal opinion. Definitely not 2 years or 3 years like what I did. Any more questions on this? Okay, so we have another nice convoluted question bucket here. Every bank, investor, and financier requires security, the collateral against the funding provided to a project. That's the security. Circle the correct letter for collateral used against the amount funded for the following. So 4 of these are correct. We're talking about security, which is revenues, which is rights revenues, and that's also referred to as collateral.
Is it C, D, G, and I'm doubting F?
Oh no, I need to look at my answer key here. I don't know this by heart. What did you say? C, D, G. So G is correct. D is correct. And then you had C.
Yeah.
All right, let's look at C. For a gap loan, most banks require a minimum guarantee advance payment payable by a bankable sales agent in the amount of 20% of the budget at a minimum, as well as 200% of a bank as a collateral for the gap loan. So what it says here is they want you to get a minimum guarantee from a sales agent. Why would they do that?
Okay. Yeah, at the minimum, that was my concern, but I figured it's just, you know, another vague answer.
Yeah, it is a vague answer because it's total bullshit. This makes no sense, that answer, because the bank would never ask for a minimum guarantee for a sales agent because they can't give you a loan.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's a no-go. What was the other one?
F.
Oh, F. Okay, so let's look at F. To verify the feasibility of a project, and an equity investor would review the unused collateral from a bank and the mezzanine lender of one as part of the finance plan, and consider the potential upside of a project you may have through selling the US and ancillary as well. Okay, I did not mark this as correct, so let me read why this is not correct. I think this should also not, this is like Jinglish here, Jeanette. Damn it.
No, it's good. It keeps us on our toes.
Oh my God, it's so Jinglish. I must have written these answers when I was drunk. Hold on. Okay, so the equity investor would obviously look at the collateral that is not used by the bank because the bank recoups before. So this part is correct. And he would also look at a mezzanine lender, if one is part of the finance plan, to see how much collateral are they taking away. And he would consider the potential upside of a project by selling the unit rights. And answer, why is this not correct? This is correct. Why is this not correct? This would be correct. Wouldn't it be correct?
I thought it was correct.
Oh, it is correct because we had 9. Yes, it is totally correct.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm going to just delete this word because this is Jinglish. Yes, this answer is correct. So what happens here is the equity looks at who is recouping in front of me and what are they taking away from me? That's what the equity investor is looking at. He's seeing, okay, we're getting all these rights revenues and the bank is taking a portion and the mezzanine lender is taking a portion. And if there's not enough for me or just like barely enough for me, I want to look at the upside I can take from the US and I want to get some feedback on that. That's basically what he's saying. And that is correct.
So B would be the other right answer because A doesn't make any sense, and E doesn't make any sense because mezzanine never recoups with the bank in the same time.
Hold on a second, we're at 9. Why does A not make sense? In my book, A makes sense.
But gap loan never requires a minimum of 3 pre-sales.
Of course it does. Always. A bank will always require a minimum of 3 pre-sales in order to give you a gap loan because they want to verify the marketability of the project. If you don't have any pre-sales, you're not going to get a gap loan.
But 3 specific pre-sales?
3 specifics. They're not specific as in sell Germany, England, and Spain, but there are 3 pre-sales that they want to see.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Most
number
banks.
3 just threw me off because it's just...
I understand because I think I mentioned this once in all of the modules. So if you didn't read them, it's easy to jump over. But it is actually 3. So good that you're asking it now, you know. Okay. They're asking for 3 presets. Usually what they want to see is like 2 in the major territories and 1 in like a semi-major. So it could be like Germany, Italy, and Benelux, or Germany, Italy, and Middle East, something like that. Could be 3 pre-sales where 2 of them are tier 1 and 1 is tier 2, for example. Okay. Right? Just FYI. So A is correct, F is correct, G is correct, and I think you guys already said that. And then D is correct. You said that also, right? Did we talk about this? Yes, we did. So which other ones did you feel were correct where you were confused? Did you have another one other than A, D, F, or G that you felt was right? So we can talk about that. I guess you didn't. Okay. Is this clear to everyone though? If you have questions.
Jay just texted that he thought it was A, B, and D.
So let's look at B. I'm gonna make a note. He said
that
B,
was for a different.
So,
that was for a different question. That person got confused. They were asking.
Oh,
about
okay.
B.
Okay.
That was
all right. So everyone understands. What is it here? Do you have question 7? Yes, we do have question 7. You're gonna have to watch the entire recording to find it. Okay, I'm going back. Hold on.
I have a couple, but I don't know if they were all the correct
Hold on,
ones.
let me go back. Here is your question 7. The answer would have been A, D, E.
Thank you.
Why are these green? They should be blue. I'm such a stickler for stuff like that. Make this blue. Otherwise it's confusing. All right, yeah, you got 7. We got 10. Let's go to 11. Where is 11? 8, 9, 10. Here we go. 10. We're going to 10. 10 is the next one, right?
Yep.
I definitely need more coffee.
Yeah,
okay. Huh?
10 is the correct question next.
Thank you so much. Only one is correct. Which one?
This is the one I emailed you about the correct answer that we were reviewing, and I thought it was D, except for I thought equity should be up to 45%, unless I did the calculations wrong.
No, D is correct. So what other one would be right then in your mind?
I didn't see any right. I just thought the equity would go up to be a total equity investment of 45% to completely get 100% of the budget.
Oh, so you thought it would be 45 instead of 35?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yes.
Okay, so let's go through it. So here's our movie. Let's do it like again, $10 million, right? So we got $2 million from tax credits. We got $1.5 million from equity. We got $1 million from mezzanine. We got $1 million for crowdfunding. One of you needs to type this into a calculator, please. We got $500,000 from brand integration. We got $2 million from an MG or $2 million from a bank. So I have, can someone type in 2 plus 1.5 plus 1 plus 1 plus 500 and plus 2 and tell me how much that is? Hold on. Okay, so 3,5, 4,5, 5,5, 6.
8 million.
8 million, correct. We're missing money. We're missing 2 million, right?
Yeah, and that would cover from 15 to 35. That gives us 20% extra equity, which would be 2 million.
Correct. What did I say? So that's why it's 35 and not 15.
Yeah.
So 45 would be another million, which I'll take, but we don't need. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Does this make sense for everyone else also?
Yes.
Good. Well, you guys are so good. You learned a little bit, it seems like. All right, here's a fun one. 7 answers are correct, so it's probably easier to tell me which is the one that is not correct.
G?
I picked everything except for B and C, but I could be wrong.
Okay, so I'm gonna...
Comma doesn't pick up the phone. That's the one that got me thinking.
Which one got you thinking pick up the phone where, what?
Yeah, when collection agent picks up the phone to like find the money from various distributors.
They do not.
Yeah,
Yeah.
G. Yeah.
So G is the only one that's not correct, if I'm counting this correctly, because A is correct, B and C is correct, D is correct, E is correct, F is correct, H is correct. But someone said they didn't like B and C to be correct. Do we want to look at that?
Yes, please.
Yes, let's do that. So B, a collection agent is a neutral third party who sets up a bank account that they solely control. That is true. The bank account is used to collect any and all distribution revenues from distributors who bought the distribution license for a project from the sales agent who would make their payments into this collection account. Okay, this is correct. Bank loans may not be paid to the collection agent, but may be, per the bank's request, paid directly to the bank.
That
is also correct. So what here is not, what in B do you feel should not be correct? What does not make sense to you in this? Anything that you feel is not right? Let me know. Okay, guess not. Let's look at C. Once the distributors release the film in their country and achieve revenues in excess of the distribution payment they made, which is the minimum guarantee advance they gave you, they would deduct agreed distribution fees and expenses and pay an agreed split of the overage to the collection account as well, which would then be managed by the collection agent. So that means we're talking about overages here. You guys remember what overages are, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Money that they earn on top of the minimum guarantee.
Correct. So those go to the collection account, right?
Yeah, it's extra revenue.
Correct. And is there anything here that you feel is not correct in C?
No.
Okay. All right. So is this all this stuff clear to everyone, what the collection agent does?
Yes.
Okay. Question 12. What does a completion bond do? Only 2 of those things he does do. Tell me which ones.
I'm sorry, Jeanette, could you go back to just so I can make sure my answers are correct, because I obviously had
yeah, just look down here. By the way, I'm gonna send this obviously to everyone, but you can see here A, B, C, D, E, F, H are your answers for this one.
All right, thank you.
Okay, dog. Okay, so completion bond, what are we thinking?
I think the right answers would be B and C.
Yeah.
That's correct. Does anyone have a question about this? No? Good.
That was the easy one.
That was the easy one. So this is also going to be easy, and you're going to do it on your own, because I'm not going to walk you through this, because it's very similar to what we have done before, but I will maybe tell you what the answer is so you know when you're right or wrong. Let's see here. This is your answer. This is where you should be ending up in question 13. So do this on your own. This is the case study. And it's very similar to the final case study that was given as a suggested assignment if you didn't have to do that, but if you felt like doing it, it was a prep for the final. So this is the same thing. Basically talks about pre-sales that were made and goes on the same steps, just different numbers. So if you want me to send you the suggested assignment, I can do that because it's the same thing, just different numbers.
May I just ask a question about this study?
Yes.
It's about the, just a second, the line, the sales agent line in the recoupment sheet. We are giving 16% for the unsold rights, it's okay, but for the 6% which is charged on pre-sales, I think that the calculation in the template includes the entire pre-sales, but we already paid the 6% for the down payment. So I think that
I will look at that template. I thought I separated it between 6% for pre-sales and 16% for.
Yes.
I thought I separated that, if I remember this correctly, but I will look.
Yeah, it's correct. But what I'm asking is the sales agents take the 6% from the entirety of pre-sales.
No. They only take it for the pre-sales.
Yeah, the pre-sales, but we already paid the down payment, the 6% for the down payment when we were taking the money, the actual money.
Did we though? Did we not defer this?
Yes.
I'm going to look at that. All right. Good point. Let me check on that on the, you're talking about the suggested assignment, right?
Yes.
I'm going to look at the formula.
Because it says pre-sales agent fee and expenses in the funding sheet.
Okay.
So the on the left, I mean.
Okay.
So we already paid the 6% for the down payment.
For the down payment. So we only have to pay the 6% for the portion
yes,
of the
rest
without the down payment. Got it. I will look at the formula. Thank you for pointing that out.
No problem. So what I found as the answer is a little bit higher than yours. So I have.
Tell me the answer so I know I can fix this. What is the answer?
$631,000. $123.44. So it's 631,123.44.
631,123.44. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to look at that assignment. Thank you for letting me know.
I actually have a slightly different number. I have 628,870.
Why don't you send me your sheet and I can look at that?
Okay.
Yeah.
I have 688,166.
You send me.
I also have 688.
Okay, send me all your send me those Excel so I can see, and I will also make the change that we just talked about, and then we see where we end up, and then I'll send you back the what I come up with. So send me those. It's all good.
Okay.
Okay. So I think we're done here. I think. So the last question I have for you guys is, what in the modules did you feel was hard for you to follow? What was an area where you felt it could have been explained a little better?
Can I actually ask one quick question about question 13, the case study? I'm just nervous that because we're doing the top sheet and I'm plugging that number in, that my whole budget is going to depend on that. Can you tell us what the correct
the
budget number is? I just want to make sure I'm working from the
Where's your budget? 13,719,105.
Can you say that one more time?
13,719,105, and it's
thank you.
Screen. Yeah. So what was an area in the module you felt you struggled with that could have been more clarified, if any? They were all easy? All right then.
Not easy, but well explained, let's say.
Okay, well explained, good.
For me, the hardest part I had was when we started getting more and more into the case studies.
Okay.
And as things got more complicated, I kind of struggled with, I guess, the next level. in terms of using a new Excel spreadsheet with more complications, really.
Okay, so would it have helped you if I do like steps in between, or maybe do like a video of a case study that kind of doesn't jump from one to the next, and maybe have like a medium case study in between?
I think that would have helped me a little bit more.
Okay, I will look at that. Thank you, Zoran, for that feedback. That's very helpful. I'll make a note of this. Is there any other feedback you want to share with me? What you hated?
I had the same problem as Zoran. When I jump into the spreadsheets, I got totally crazy. Like, oh my God. It's the.
Do you think it would be better if I don't give the example spreadsheets and let you guys do your own spreadsheets?
No.
Oh my gosh.
No.
Scary.
No. No.
Right, I'll give them in. All right, so I think what I should do, if I understand your feedback correctly, is maybe go a little slower in those steps. And when I add an element to a finance plan, maybe add an in-between step so that we're not jumping from, a simple finance plan to one that has too many new things for you. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think it was like, for me at least, I feel like when I was jumping from each Excel sheet, I understood that the module was covering a new aspect of what we were implementing into the spreadsheet. But I think the explanation of that kind of, I was confused on it. Just like, it sort of just jumped into it versus just kind of explaining why we were adding it into it.
Okay, good. That's very good feedback. So I'll slice them down a little more, so that I will do the extra steps with everything I add. Basically, I add an extra step and just do a video. I mean, I don't have to do case study for all of them, but at least a video that explains a case study. I don't want to bombard people with making all these studies. But I think it's a good point in saying I could do a video of something that I'm adding. At least people understand why it was added and how it was added.
But
Okay, good feedback.
The Zoom every 2 weeks to ask all the questions and go through the case studies. That was very helpful.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Because
the Zoom videos of the case studies that you explained them when you did it with Jessica, but then also when you explained the most recent one was really helpful. Like, I went through each step and just listened, and I was able to apply what you were saying in the real time.
Okay.
And that was really helpful. So that helped me to kind of understand each step of the case study more clearly.
So maybe that's what I'll do. Maybe I'll record the steps in a way that explains why I'm doing what I'm doing that is new.
Yeah,
in
that
a
would
video.
help.
Yeah, they didn't have Zoom last semester, so I did a lot, as you saw, with the PowerPoint presentations that then became videos. So that was a new thing. And also the Zoom classes itself. This is supposed to be an online class only, so we're not even supposed to have these meetings, but I'm doing them anyway because I think it's helpful. So, but I'm only doing it every 2 weeks because I don't want to bombard people that take a ton of other classes. Now, would you have liked this class to be during the week for the Zoom sessions? I'm always sensitive to other classes that they have. That's why I pushed it towards the weekend. Is that a bothersome?
I love having it on the weekend.
Saturday worked for me perfectly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I work, so Saturdays were really good for me too.
Okay.
That's right. Saturday is good.
Well, any other feedback that you can think of where I could have done something better, I would appreciate if you just let me know or send me an email or something. I have no ego about this stuff. I change the course a little bit every time to optimize a few things. So any feedback is helpful. That would be awesome if you can.
Are you going to teach any other classes?
I'm only teaching this one because this one's already causing me to lose hair. Thank you very much. Okay. But I am teaching. I mean, I get hired by like film festivals and other places to do these classes all the time. And I think I mentioned to you that I had to do one for the PGA where I put our entire 3 months into 1 hour. That was fun. So I do this in different forms and shapes for other institutions, but I'm not teaching another class at UCLA. I'm only teaching this entertainment finance class. And I enjoy this and that I enjoy the subject matter so much. I really don't want to be teaching anything else. Honestly, I don't know if I can dig it so much, but this is really, it's fun for me. So that's why I do it.
And thank you so much for being available during the week when we don't understand anything. I know I've jumped on a couple of Zooms with you to get some things explained. So I appreciate that.
And thank you for saying that. I love actually doing that with anyone who gets stuck. And I really enjoy the exchange between all of you and each and every one of you throughout the course, because you guys are so interesting. Everyone has an interesting story, an interesting past, an interesting path. That is a lot of joy for me to kind of exchange with you one-on-one. So that was actually the fun part to do this. And if I have time, why not? I mean, it's so easy to jump on a Zoom call because I'm sitting on my desk anyway, doing something. So I sometimes welcome the disruption. Yeah, so that.
Quick question.
Yeah, of course.
I saw that you are updating the videos on your YouTube channel. So I'm not sure if the old videos still are online. So I just wanted to ask, are the videos that you prepared for our class, are they going to be
Everything stays.
available?
Everything stays. Nothing goes, because one of you, and I forgot who it was, she was great. She basically put together a whole list of video that she can go back to after the course. She had it like all organized.
Okay.
I forgot who it was. I'm so bad with names, but
it was me.
Yes, it was you.
It was easy. I just created it.
You know what? I need you to send that list to everyone, or to me at least, and then I'll
figure out how I can do that. It was really easy. I just made a YouTube channel, and every time there was a video, I linked it and saved it, so that way I've got the UCLA class and all the videos that I can go back and see afterwards.
I love that. So I'm going to steal that list from you, and you're going to send it to me, and then I'll send it to everyone.
I will.
I thought that was very great, because I am keeping those videos. I keep everything on there. Obviously, the course that comes after you or before you, they get different links that pertain to their course. And I'm not expecting them to look at everything that's on my video, on my channel. And most people don't. They just go look at what the link is that I gave them. And it changes with every class, of course, because I do different videos for every semester. But the videos that I've done, all of them are still on YouTube, and they will stay on YouTube. And they're only accessible through the links that I gave you. They're not public videos.
Okay, thank you.
So you'll keep those. I'm not deleting those.
Okay.
And if, let's say, as you go forward, and I've done this many times, if you start working on something, or if you work on a project, or if you have a conversation with an investor, or you have a deal that you're working on where you need feedback, don't hesitate to email me. Just say, I'm working on this, I'm stuck, or I'm having this deal that I need to do. What do I do? Obviously, I'm not a lawyer, so I can't give you legal advice, but I can give you my opinion, and you can do with it whatever you want. I'm allowed to do that. So feel free to contact me with anything that comes up as you go forward and do stuff. Any questions you have with anything that is in the future, I'd want you to know I am available for this. So this is just the beginning. All right.
Could you just go to the answer page of the question 12, please? I just wanted to verify. Of course. Thank you.
Ta-ta.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yes. Wait, what is here? Question D, was D only 10? Let me see 10. Someone asked about 10. Hold on, let me go back. Yes, D for 10. All right.
I'm sorry, could you go back to 12?
Of course. There we go. Oops, what's that?
Jeanette, thanks again for making the time for the Zoom. It's been super, super helpful.
Of course. I don't know why it's doing this. You wanted 12, right?
Yes.
No, I want to do the Zoom because it helps me to understand where you need clarification and what questions you have. There isn't really, yes, of course, I jump on the phone with you and I do a lot via email, but I think the Zoom classes are great because other people also hear questions that you have, and then they realize, oh yeah, I had that same question actually. That's good that he asked that or she asked that. So I think it's helpful for everyone.
Jeanette, maybe in maybe a future model, it might help to know the timing of when the cash comes in and out. So like maybe a timeline, so the producer knows development funding, legal, all these things.
That's a good point.
Are the responsible of the producer. before, X months before the project and all that stuff, the writing. And so that helps, people know when the cash flows come in and out.
So I'm going to do a timeline of recoupment and a timeline of funding. Of course, it changes with every project.
Right, exactly.
That's another thing. The reason why I'm being always careful with this stuff and do it verbally rather than in writing is because people say, but Jeanette, of course you wrote this and it took much longer and now I'm in a fight with my investor. So, there is that. Everything is very project related. So I can only give you estimates and I'm happy to do that. That's a good point. So I'm going to do an estimated timeline for funding and recoupment.
Yeah, you could do
estimated timeline for funding
plus to get away, to get out of things. We'll do like 18 months plus. And then...
Yes, correct. So when you do an investment, when you do a business plan, I would say give yourself to recoup equity, give yourself to recoup the bank loan, give yourself 2 years. To recoup the mezzanine, give yourself 5 years. You're probably not going to need it, but yes. And for equity investors, just let the equity investor know it will likely take at minimum 3 years for you to get your money back or some of it back when the recoupments will be coming in. The first 2 years are reserved for loans, and then you will start seeing money at the end of the third year or the beginning or the middle, somewhere in the third year. So that's usually a good ballpark. And obviously you never agree to a timeline with an equity investor because you don't have to. But they want to know sometimes when am I getting my money? What's the deal? I usually do, depending on what it is. I just did a Slate thing where I did a 5-year turnaround for Slate. But Slate is different because it's more projects than one. But in that case, for example, I did 5 years for the equity investor who would invest in all of these projects within a 2-year frame. So I would, let's say, produce 5 projects within 2-year time frame. And it would take about 5 years for the equity investor to return their money and see some profits. Just to give you an idea, it really kind of depends a little bit. But if you go above 3 years for equity, you're in the safe zone, I think. Yeah. Okay, you beautiful people, I shall let you go. This was a lot of fun. I know I had some appointments set up with people that I totally screwed up right now for office hours. Sorry about that. Well, I'm going to get to you when we're done here. So all the best to everything you're doing in the future and everything that comes up, and just stay in touch with me so that we are hopefully, learning more about each other as you go on and do beautiful things. And if you have any questions that come up as you're concluding this stuff, let me know. Please put in all the items that you don't see graded on your grade sheet. So anything that you don't see a grade for on your grade sheet, it means that I don't have it. So either submit it through Canvas or send me an email. If I don't have it, I cannot grade it. And at some point, I will have to put a 0 there, which affects your grade. So whatever I don't have, I'm going to have to put 0 by, I think the 13th is when I need to put in all the grades. So just know that. And if you're okay with that, doesn't matter, then that's fine. But if you want to send me something that you want me to grade, just send it to me before. Okay?
Sounds good.
Thank you, Jeanette.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
All right, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. How on earth am I closing this meeting?
You need to stop recording it first.
Yeah, I know. End meeting for all. I'm leaving. Bye. Oh, yeah.